Toga, toga, toga. That single word turned a scrappy campus comedy shot for $3 million into a $140 million phenomenon and basically invented the frat house genre as we know it. Every raunchy college movie made in the last 45 years owes something to Delta Tau Chi, but almost half a century later, the story behind the camera is nothing like the story on screen. Some of these actors became legends, some vanished on purpose, and some never made it out of their 30s. Stick around, because by the end of this you'll understand why the man who directed this movie once said that making people laugh that hard came with a price nobody talks about. Let's start with the loudest one in the room. John Belushi played Bluto Blutarsky, the wild-eyed, toga-wearing, zip-hopping engine of chaos at the center of the film, and in 1978, he was already the biggest thing to come out of the first season of Saturday Night Live. Born John Adam Belushi on January 24, 1949, in Chicago's Humboldt Park neighborhood, he was the son of Albanian immigrants who ran a diner. By the time Animal House shot, he was 28 years old and already a national name, famous for the samurai sketches and the killer bees, and Animal House only made him bigger. But fame didn't fix what was underneath. Friends who knew him well, including Penny Marshall, described walking down the street with him and watching total strangers press drugs into his hands, as if being near him meant an invitation to join whatever party he was supposedly always having. By February of 1982, not even 4 years after Animal House hit theaters, Belushi checked into his favorite bungalow at the Chateau Marmont in West Hollywood, the same hotel that had quietly hosted decades of Hollywood's off-camera lives. He was in Los Angeles trying to get a screenplay off the ground, and by most accounts the meetings were going badly. Visitors cycled through that bungalow over his final days, including Robert De Niro and Robin Williams, both of whom later said the scene inside felt wrong and left. His dealer, a Canadian backup singer named Kathy Smith, stayed. In the early hours of March 5, 1982, she injected him with a mixture of cocaine and heroin, a speedball. Belushi went to sleep and did not wake up. His personal trainer found him around midday. He was 33 years old. Smith later confessed the details to a tabloid, was charged, and eventually served time for involuntary manslaughter. Belushi's death turned the Chateau Marmont, a hotel that had spent decades cultivating discretion, into a permanent footnote in true crime history. Nearly 45 years later, he's still the name most people think of first when this cast comes up, and he's also the reason the rest of this list carries so much weight. Now here's a story with a much happier middle, even if the ending is still sad. Stephen first played Kent Flounder Dorfman, the doughy, big-hearted legacy pledge, who gets talked into shooting a horse with blanks and somehow survives being humiliated by literally everyone in the fraternity. First was born Stephen Nelson Forstein on May 8, 1954, in Norfolk, Virginia, and he was only 22 when the movie shot. His path into the role has become one of the most repeated origin stories in comedy history, and it happens to be true. After graduating from Virginia Commonwealth University, First moved to Los Angeles and took a job delivering pizzas while chasing acting work. He started slipping his own headshot into the pizza boxes on the off chance one landed on the right desk. One did. Producer Matty Simmons of National Lampoon opened a box, saw the photo, and called him in to read for the film. That's genuinely how Flounder got cast. What most retellings leave out is the harder part of his life. First's father died of complications from diabetes when Stephen was a teenager, and First himself was later diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and struggled with his weight for most of his adult life. He kept working for decades afterward, becoming a fixture on St. Elsewhere as Dr. Elliot Axelrod through the 1980s, then playing the Centauri diplomat Virkoto on Babylon 5 through the 1990s, while also directing episodes of the show. He later became a spokesperson for the American Diabetes Association, trying to warn other people about exactly what was happening inside his own body. On June 16, 2017, he died at his home in Moorpark, California, from complications of that same disease. He was 63. His sons didn't want a wave of sadness attached to his memory. They asked fans to skip the grieving and just go watch one of his movies, or use one of his own jokes to make somebody laugh. Hard, the way he always wanted. Then there's the mayor. Cesare De Nova played Carmine de Pasto, the smooth, faintly corrupt mayor of Faber's college town, who name-drops the homecoming parade like it's a personal favor. DeNovo was born Cesare Diedinger on March 1, 1926, in Bergamo, Italy, and he was 51 when Animal House shot. Already decades into a serious international career, most American audiences never fully clocked. He'd trained and worked in Rome after the war, before Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer brought him to Hollywood in the 1950s. In 1963, he landed what should have been a career-defining role in Cleopatra, playing Apollodorus opposite Elizabeth Taylor, with a script originally written to give him real weight alongside Richard Burton. Then Taylor and Burton's off-screen affair became the biggest tabloid story in the world. The studio rewrote the picture around the two of them, and DeNovo's part was cut down to almost nothing. He never quite got that altitude back, but he also never stopped working. He played a mob boss for Martin Scorsese in Mean Streets in 1973, then spent the rest of his career bouncing between film and a long list of television guest spots. Everything from Murder, She Wrote to Falcon Crest. He was also, by every account, a genuinely accomplished man off-screen, a skilled horseman, a serious polo player, and an expert archer. On March 19, 1992, at 66 years old, he just wrapped a guest appearance on In the Heat of the Night and drove to the headquarters of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Los Angeles for a meeting of the Foreign Language Film Committee, the group that votes on the Best International Feature Oscar. He suffered a heart attack during that meeting and died soon after. The man who never quite got a shot at the very top of Hollywood spent his last conscious hour helping decide who else would get theirs. If Belushi is the name most people remember, Doug Kenney might be the one most people have never heard, even though without him this movie doesn't exist at all. Kenney isn't a major character on screen. He plays Stork, the spaced-out kid who wanders the marching band straight into a brick wall. But off-screen, he co-wrote the entire film with Harold Ramis and Chris Miller, and years earlier he'd co-founded National Lampoon magazine itself, the whole engine that made this brand of comedy possible in the first place. Douglas Clark Francis Kenney was born December 10, 1946, in West Palm Beach, Florida, raised in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and went to Harvard, where he ran the Harvard Lampoon before helping launch the national version at just 23. By the summer of 1980, he'd also co-written Caddyshack, and when that film opened to harsh reviews, Kenney took it hard and started using more cocaine. His friends were worried enough that Chevy Chase brought him to Kauai to dry out and decompress. It didn't fully take. Chase eventually had to fly back for work. Kenney's girlfriend Catherine Walker joined him, and then also had to leave. And Kenney was alone on the island when he told a friend he was going to head back out to a scenic lookout point. On August 27, 1980, he walked past the warning signs at the Hanapere Lookout, out onto a crumbling ledge, and fell 35 feet to the rocks below. His rental car was found abandoned the next day. It took 3 more days to find his body. Kauai police ruled it accidental. Harold Ramis, his close friend and co-writer, later gave the line that's followed Kenney's death ever since, that he probably fell while he was looking for a place to jump. He was 33 years old, exactly the same age Belushi would be when he died, less than 2 years later. 2 of the men most responsible for the funniest movie of the decade were both dead of 33 within 24 months of each other. John Vernon carried the film's other half, the fury to Belushi's chaos. He played Dean Vernon Wormer, the buzzcut disciplinarian who delivers the single most quoted line in the whole movie, warning that fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life. Vernon was born Adolphus Vernon Agapsowicz on February 24, 1932, in Regina, Saskatchewan, and trained at London's Royal Academy of Dramatic Art before building a long career playing serious villains, including the voice of Big Brother in a 1956 television adaptation of 1984, a corrupt cop in Dirty Harry, a Hitchcock heavy in Topaz, and a role opposite Clint Eastwood in The Outlaw Josie Wales. By the time Animal House came along, he reportedly viewed a broad college comedy as a step down from that resume, and only came around because it turned out to be the role America genuinely loved him for. He kept working steadily for decades afterward, doing voice work for animated shows well into the 2000s. In January of 2005, he underwent heart surgery. It initially seemed successful. 16 days later, on February 1, 2005, He died in his sleep at 72, following complications from that surgery. He left behind a body of work stretched across 5 decades, and a daughter who went on to become an actress herself. Vernon Bloom, born August 7, 1938, in Lynn, Massachusetts, played Dean Wormer's restless wife Marion, best remembered for a flirtatious grocery store scene with Tim Matheson's character that ends in a brief affair. What most audiences never realized is that they were watching one of the more serious character actresses of her generation, slumming it in a comedy, for a paycheck and a laugh. Bloom made her name in Haskell Wexler's 1969 film Medium Cool, playing a mother searching for her son inside real, unscripted footage of the riots surrounding the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, a sequence historic enough that the film was later preserved by the Library of Congress. She went on to work 3 times with Martin Scorsese, including playing the Virgin Mary in The Last Temptation of Christ, and she starred opposite Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter. She married the writer and screenwriter Jay Cox, and the two eventually settled in Bar Harbor, Maine. In her later years, she developed dementia, and she died there on January 9, 2019, at the age of 80. People who worked with her often said the role she was actually proudest of wasn't the boozy dean's wife everyone quotes. It was standing in for the Mother of Christ in a Scorsese film most casual fans of Animal House have never even seen. Sarah Holcomb played Clarette DePasto, the mayor's teenage daughter caught up in the film's most controversial subplot. She was 19 playing 13, and it was essentially her film debut, arriving with enough buzz that she was already being lined up for other studio projects before Animal House even hit theaters. She went on to appear in Caddyshack 2 years later alongside several of the same collaborators, and for a brief stretch in the late 1970s and early 1980s, she was genuinely one of the busier young actresses in comedy. Then, around the early 1980s, she stepped away from the industry almost entirely and has stayed out of the public eye ever since, declining interviews and skipping the reunion specials and anniversary panels that most of her castmates eventually took part in. People who worked with her on set have spoken generally about how young and unprepared she was for the pace of that world at the time. But what actually happened in her life afterward, and why she chose to disappear so completely, has never been something she's confirmed publicly herself. And out of respect for a private citizen who has spent over 4 decades deliberately avoiding the spotlight, that's really as far as anyone outside her own circle can honestly say. She's the one name on this list nobody in the Animal House orbit can produce, and by every indication, that's exactly how she wants it. The Omegas, Delta snobbish rivals, were played by 3 actors who, unlike a lot of this list, are still very much working today. Mark Metcalf played Doug Niedermeyer, the ROTC fascist with the riding crop, who delivers the film's other most quoted line about exactly whose backside belongs to him. Metcalf went on to a strange and fun second act, showing up as the same kind of screaming authority figure in Twisted Sister's music videos in the 80s, later playing the maestro on Seinfeld, and he's continued doing voice and character work for years since. James Doughton played Greg Marmalard, the smug, hair-perfect Omega president. He kept acting through the 1980s before shifting behind the camera to work as a casting director and producer, largely stepping back from interviews about the film in recent years. Bruce McGill played D-Day, the leather-jacketed biker, who technically isn't even an Omega, but fits right into their world of physical menace. McGill has had, by a wide margin, the longest continuous career of the trio, turning up in Michael Mann's The Insider, the MacGyver TV series, and dozens of other film and television roles as everything from FBI agents to Texas governors, the kind of reliably excellent character actor whose face people recognize even when the name doesn't come immediately. The Deltas who lived, on the other hand, mostly turned their Animal House exposure into genuine, long careers. Tim Matheson played Eric Otter Stratton, the fraternity's smooth-talking president, and had already been acting since childhood, going back to Leave It to Beaver. He picked up 2 Emmy nominations decades later for his work on The West Wing, actually bought National Lampoon magazine outright in 1989 and ran it for a period, and has continued working steadily in film